you don't like this president and you didn't like the last one. They are very different people, and one of them is much more of a threat to the republic, and that would be the 45th. Would you not agree?
Well,
come on, threat to the republic, Joe Biden? No. Joe Biden is a return to normalcy.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to FirstReaction TV. My name is J Mart. So today we're going to listen to a conversation between Dr. Phil and Bill Maher. We just heard Bill Maher make the claim that the 45th president is more of a danger to the Republic of the United States than Joe Biden is. You heard Dr. Phil there hesitate a little bit, and he really wasn't ready to commit to that statement. Now, I've always been a big fan of Bill Maher, even though our belief systems normally don't match up, and I would disagree with him a lot, actually. I still enjoyed watching him. Bill Maher is kind of an old school liberal. He is a free speech, anti-war, that kind of liberal, not the ones that we see today. So his old belief systems don't really match up with the current party. So we're going to talk about that a little bit too. So these two men continue to have a conversation about this topic, other topics going on in America between the woke ideology, school systems, and other political issues. And we might see Bill Maher contradict himself a few times throughout this process. So I hope you guys enjoy the video. Please hit that like button, comment, and subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. I really appreciate you watching, and I hope you enjoy the video.
And one of them is much more of a threat to the republic, and that would be the 45th. Would you not agree?
Well,
come on, threat to the republic, Joe Biden? No. Joe Biden is a return to normalcy, yet a Democrat who is, yes, too much ensorcelled by his fringe left. He will not ever tell them to sit down and shut up. But I will take that bargain, much as I don't like it and it's bitter. I will take that bargain over Trump. Come on.
All right, so just right off the bat, it happens almost instantly. You can't really say that someone is a return to normalcy when they can't tell the fringe part of their party no. If the fringe part of your party is running everything, then you are just as fringe as they are. That's how this works. So obviously, if you're fringe and you are coming up with insane ideologies, pushing insane ideologies onto people, that's really not a return to normalcy. Joe Biden ran on a promise to return everything to normal, but it has been everything but.
And I'm particularly concerned about this woke agenda that's being pushed.
Agreed.
Right now. I'm concerned about what's happening in American colleges right now.
Oh.
My God.
Insanity. I don't think people know. I just don't think they know. Because I think, and I don't know, of course, I've not been on campus, but you can read so many first-person reports. And you can see, you can read that it's in the literature of what these universities say they're doing or in their curriculum. I mean, there is like hard evidence of, oh yeah, this is going on. And then all the speakers that get chased off of campuses because kids, they're far from defending free speech. They don't even believe in it as a concept. They are so spoiled and entitled that they believe that their feelings far supersede this concept of free speech. That is a complete decoupling of one of the utter basic principles that undergird this country.
I don't know that they're coddled,
exactly.
They complain, they whine, and they still get pushed through.
And they're not required to take anything that is useful. Now, some of them do. We still have STEM degrees, and that's going up finally after years of not, I think, which is good. But, I mean, you can graduate with such bullshit degrees of sports marketing and gender studies and advanced racist spotting and just this insane indoctrinated, I mean, that is not an exaggerated term.
No, it's not.
All right, so now we have Bill Maher himself admitting that indoctrination's happening. We have a group of people being indoctrinated by schools to believe and think a certain way. They no longer believe in free speech. They think their feelings are more important than the Constitution of the United States. I've brought this up on other videos, but Bill Maher just recently interviewed Elon Musk, and Elon Musk had this to say.
The amount of indoctrination that's happening in schools and universities is, I think, far beyond what parents realize. And I sort of came to realize this somewhat late. The experience that we had in high school and college is not the experience that kids today are having. Parents are just generally not aware of what their kids are being taught, or what they're not being taught. Let me give you an example that a friend of mine told me, which his daughters go to high school in the Bay Area, and he was asking them, like, well, so who are the first few presidents of the United States? They could name Washington, and I said, well, what do you know about him? Well, he was a slave owner. What else?
Right. Exactly.
Nothing.
Right.
Like, okay, maybe you should know more than that. Yeah.
Yeah. That is the woke mind virus. Exactly. Yeah.
All right, so far, Bill Maher has made some pretty alarming admissions. He has admitted that our president is ran by the fringe side of his party and that he's afraid to stand up to the fringe side of the party. He has admitted that there is a woke agenda being pushed. Wonder who's pushing that. He has admitted that our schools are being indoctrinated by this woke agenda. Wonder who's pushing that. Federal government. He has also admitted that it is teaching our kids, our students, that free speech is no longer a core value, that your feelings are more important than the Constitution. Those are some pretty alarming things to admit, and then not say that this man might be a danger to our republic. So let's keep going and see if there's some more admissions.
And about that time, we started seeing the biggest spikes in depression, loneliness, and anxiety that we've seen since we started keeping records.
Right. And you've been a good one to call that out. And you are right about that also with me. We're very much on that same page.
It's like 7 times up for girls, 4 times for boys.
Right.
And the pandemic made it worse. And what bothers me is they shut the schools down and they shut the country down, knowing that was the state of our young people's mental health. They knew that they were in dire straits, and they shut down their world and isolated them, knowing it was going to spike, and they did it anyway.
You are
What the hell is going on?
Once again, we're on the same page there, because I was a big critic of that, and now the chickens have come home to roost.
But who does that? I mean, they know that it's the highest level starting in 09 and 10, and they say, well, okay, let's send them all home and isolate them.
Who does it? COVID paranoids. That's who does it. We have a new breed of people.
Oh, yes, the COVID paranoids that locked down schools and prevented children from leaving their house. Who was that again?
If you have been putting off being vaccinated for whatever reason, if you're unvaccinated, and it's the unvaccinated people who it's going to make sick from it because you weren't vaccinated. If you are vaccinated, but you haven't been boosted yet and you're eligible for your booster, make your appointment for your booster. If you know you need to get your booster, right now, signing up for a booster right now is because we really cannot afford you having to go to the hospital right now. And we really just cannot afford for you to have to go to the hospital right now. There's no room for you in the hospital right now. And if you can somehow get a bed, if you are able to get yourself into a bed, you're going to be filling a bed that somebody else really needs. You have a much higher chance of getting this newly transmissible variant we had never seen before a couple of weeks ago. Now's the time. You should try to make your appointment now, because you may have to make it some distance in advance. So even if you didn't feel like you could do it before, even if you've been holding off for whatever reason, look at it freshly now. Now would be the time. Even if it wasn't okay for you before, it's okay for you to do it now. Honestly, your country needs you.
All right, so all of that was only from about a 5-minute clip. And did you get all that? Did you make sure? Are you worried yet? Are you scared? There's no room for you. You can't go to the hospital even if you get sick, because you're not important. Someone else might need that, and they're more important. Like, watching that video was one of the most disturbing things I have ever seen, especially coming to find out that the Pfizer and vaccine companies sponsored that show. That's disgusting and disturbing. So let's hear a little bit from the leader of the free world. Let's hear what Joe Biden has to say on this.
We follow the science. We have a pandemic among the non-vaccinated, those who are not vaccinated. If you are vaccinated, you are safe. If you are vaccinated, you have over a 98% chance of never catching the virus at all.
That when people are vaccinated, they can feel safe that they are not going to get infected, whether they're outdoors or indoors. That's the bottom line of that, to get people to appreciate you get vaccinated and you're really quite safe from getting infected.
Our Verify team is here to help you sort out fact from misinformation. And today, we're checking a claim President Biden made during his recent town hall about the COVID-19 vaccine and how effective it is. First, here's what the president said.
You're okay. You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations.
Social media lit up. We can verify, no, the vaccine will not prevent you from getting COVID. That is false.
Just learned President Biden has been tested positive for COVID-19. Let's get straight to Jeremy Diamond at the White House. Jeremy, how is the president's health overall? Obviously, he's fully vaccinated, boosted.
But we begin with the breaking news on President Biden's health. Late today, the White House announcing that the president had again tested positive for COVID after 4 days of negative tests.
Tonight, President Biden testing positive for COVID-19 yet again in a rebound case following the antiviral treatment Paxlovid. Just days ago, the White House COVID response coordinator, Dr. Aziz Shah, had downplayed the possibility of a rebound case, arguing only 5 to 8% of people who took the drug experienced them. Though rare, Dr. Anthony Fauci had a similar rebound case after he took Paxlovid.
All right, so I don't have a whole lot to say on this one. They embarrassed themselves so bad, so many times. And the whole point of this is that it's okay to say you don't know about something. It's okay to say, I'm not sure, or I don't know. It's okay to not know things. The problem is that they told you a million times that they do know, and that they're smarter than you, and they know more than you, and that if you question them, then you're a nut job, and you're a wild theorist, and a this theorist, and a that theorist. And the second they got proved wrong, they would never own up to it. This is what bad leadership looks like. This is exactly what bad leadership looks like.
And this remote learning crap, if you look at some of the remote learning, particularly for grades 1st, 2nd, 3rd, they got 0 out of it. They got 0 out of it. That means they're now way behind. And if you're not reading on grade level at the end of the 3rd grade, your likelihood of dropping out is like 6x if you're in a low socioeconomic group.
Imagine for a moment if the Trump White House had dared to question something that came out from the doctors or the scientists. We were regularly accused of being anti-science for even weighing other policy options and factoring in other things to the COVID response, like the economy, for example. So it's really a stunning degree of hypocrisy that now they have the medical experts, they have the scientists proving that it is safe to get kids back in the classroom, yet they're politicizing it and holding it off purely because of pressure that Democrats are receiving from teachers' unions. It's tragic. It is sad. We are going to see the consequences of not having kids in schools for decades to come, and it will be a failure of this administration that allowed it to happen.
So once again, this entire conversation is about a danger to our republic. What's worst for our country and what can actually be a danger to it? Well, I would say leaving the most vulnerable people, the elderly and our children, out to dry. That is an absolute danger to our republic, which is exactly what happened. Thousands upon thousands upon thousands elderly patients at nursing homes and primary care homes were left out to dry. They were forced into bad situations by Democratic-ran policies, and these people lost their lives because of it. There were cover-ups, there were people hiding certain situations. It was one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen. Children were prevented from going to school because of Democratic-ran teachers' unions, because they wanted demands met first before the kids went back to school, before the kids' needs were met. The teachers' unions had to get their way first. We needed a strong leader. Hell, we just needed a leader, period, and we didn't get it. And look no further, once again, a danger to the republic, Joe Biden.
Okay, I'm disappointed that I can't get you to just out and out say that Trump is a completely different animal than the politics on the left and the right that we both agree is very lacking on both sides.
It begs
but
the
that
question.
he is a completely different element and much more dangerous. If I can't have your faith on that, it's very hard for me to understand where you're coming from on any issue.
No, wait a minute. Hang on. You've read 1984 how many times?
Once. I certainly remember the gist, the Ministry of Truth.
Yeah, and Oceana.
Yes.
The government came in, they said, we're going to tell you what words you can use. We're going to tell you what words you can't use.
Yes.
And if you don't do it right, we're going to unperson you.
I'm all over that.
You remember all that?
I know. And by the way, the Biden administration actually tried to have this year a Ministry of Truth. They almost called it. It was very close to that. I can't remember the name.
It was close.
It was close, and it was exactly what that is. I agree.
But once again, like, this is one of the most comical and disturbing things at the same time. To have the government tell you fact from fiction, like literally telling you what is right and what you need to believe, is one of the most disturbing things you could ever have. And they had it. Sounds like they're still trying to bring it back. Once again, a danger to the republic. This is like authoritarian type stuff. This is disturbing. Highly, highly disturbing.
It's like now when I see what's happening on college campuses. I said it's when I see all of this energy that's being put into pronouns.
Right.
Like I said, a third of eighth graders don't even know what a pronoun is.
Right.
How about we teach them what a pronoun is, and then we can decide if we're going to talk to them about reassigning them. They have this big thing about the word of thee. You know, they don't. It's not the homeless.
Oh.
It has to be those experiencing homelessness.
Oh, I hate that.
And they even said you can't use the word "the" when talking about the French. And the French ambassador said, "What am I going to have the? What is it? Embassy of Frenchness? So I'm not changing the sign. What are you? But it's gotten ridiculous.
It's so beyond ridiculous. And people are always saying to me, Bill, what happened? You make fun of the left so much more than they used to. And I always have to tell them, yes, because they're so much more obnoxious and so much more ridiculous. And not that most people on the left, I think, believe this stuff, but the ones who don't, my critique with them is, you're fucking cowards, because you know the insanity of your own fringe, but you don't call it out. Why do this is obviously something that teenagers put up on Twitter or Instagram or something. Why does the rest of the country, actual adults, bow to it and follow it and go along with it? Because everyone is rolling their eyes. Almost everyone except the fucking 14-year-old who posted that. Why do we follow teenagers?
LGBTQI+ kids are resilient. They are fierce. They fight back. They're not going anywhere. And we have their back. This administration has their back.
What a painful, powerful reminder of how much work we have to do to help trans youth feel supported in living their lives, their authentic selves. And as we work to change the hearts and minds, we also have to change the laws. That's why on my first day in office, I signed an historic executive order directing federal agencies to build on the Supreme Court's Bostock ruling, protecting transgender Americans from discrimination. In the words of the order, every person should be treated with respect and dignity and should be able to live without fear, no matter who they are or whom they love.
All right, so we're all aware of the culture war and the level of indoctrination that this administration has been trying to push from day one. And this is kind of an admission of that. Saying that they signed an executive order day one. Well, day one, let's look at what was going on back then. That's when COVID was raging wild. That's when schools were being closed. That's when people were dying in nursing homes. That was the most pressing order, to sign an executive order that did what? Let every American live their lives without discrimination? Pretty sure we already have those non-discrimination laws in place. The executive order directs agencies to enforce federal laws that prohibit sex discrimination to include discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity, consistent with the Bostock decision. This will include, but not limited to, employment, education, housing, healthcare, and credit. Example number 1. Prohibit discrimination in employment under Title IX of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, including hiring, termination, promotion, conditions of employment, and benefits, as well as preventing harassment. For example, a bisexual woman cannot be fired from her job just because her employer learned of her sexual orientation. A transgender man cannot be forced to wear a woman's uniform at his place of employment. Example number 2. Prohibit discrimination in education under Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972, which applies to all federally funded educational programs including K-12, vocational programs, and higher education programs. For example, a gay student can't be prohibited from going to his public school's prom just because his date is also a boy. A transgender girl cannot be harassed by a teacher who refuses to use her correct name because it's a feminine name. So like Bill Maher suggested, things are being ran by the fringe side of the party. All this was completely unnecessary. There are already laws in place. There are already so many non-discrimination laws that prevent and protect against this type of thing. You would never in a million years right now ever turn on the news and see that someone wasn't allowed to go to their school prom because they were gay. Now you might be asking yourself, well, how is this a danger though? Like, this isn't a danger to the Republic of the United States. Well, guess what? Bad leadership is. Not paying attention to the border crisis, ignoring the border crisis, not even having a potential crisis plan in place. The fentanyl crisis that's literally tearing families apart day after day. 70,000 Americans are having their lives ruined every year because of this. And we're going to sign an order for discrimination. That's where this administration's focus is. They're focused on DEI. They're focused on inclusivity. And that's not on par with actual dangers that are facing this country for mass Americans. Once again, bad leadership equals a danger to the Republic.
This country is so psychologically sick at its core. I mean, it's such a country full of mean girls, snitches and bitches, and people who haven't done anything, but they just invent things so that they can catch other people not being as right as them. I mean, your example about the homeless is perfect. Liberals, this is my thing with liberals and woke. Like, you can believe whatever the fuck you want if you're woke. Just don't claim you're some kind of a advanced liberal. You're the opposite of liberal. Liberals are the ones who came up with the term homeless so that people wouldn't call them bums and vagrants and hobos. We did that. We came up with homeless. Then they came along and said, that's not good enough. Actually, you people are the problem. It's people experiencing homelessness. You fucking moron. That's the kind of thing that when people say, why do you make fun of the left? Because you just get under my skin like that. Do I think the right is more dangerous? Absolutely. Rationally, I do. Does this stuff make me viscerally hate more? Maybe.
Yeah, and my point about that is, if they took all of that energy and put it in to solving the problem,
right?
I think there are certain things that we have to change about our approach, and this is where the psychological part comes in for me. We've got to stop trying to win arguments and start trying to solve problems, and that is a completely different mindset. Stop trying to win arguments, start trying to solve problems. And then all of a sudden we have to start talking.
Alright, so for one last time, Bill Maher makes the claim that Republicans and conservatives are more of a danger and more of a risk to the public than people on the left, Joe Biden and the Biden administration, and I just don't know if that's true. If we just go off this interview alone, Bill Maher has already conceded that the Biden administration is ran and will not say no to the fringe side of the party. Now, the fringe side of the party is the defund the police party and the let's have open borders policies and the pronoun freaks, the indoctrination freaks, everybody pushing the woke agenda. That is the fringe side of the party. And if you can't say no to that, then I would obviously say you're putting American citizens at risk. One of the other things that was brought up in the interview was the free speech issue. We are constantly trying to censor Americans. The disinformation board that they brought in and the Biden administration was trying to push and reboot for a second time, that they need to make sure that you know what the truth is and that they need to make sure that you know their truth and the truth they're making up and the truth they're pushing. That's what they're trying to convince you of. That is a danger when the United States government is telling you what to think. Now let's check out some of the other things that happened during the Biden administration and see if it's a risk.
The coronavirus pandemic has hit older adults especially hard. More than 90,000 of America's long-term care residents have succumbed to the disease. And the inability of relatives to check on their loved ones have led to a second, less visible wave of death. In a study for the Associated Press, Kay found more than 40,000 so-called excess deaths in long-term care facilities since March.
As we reported, new test results show a significant drop in test scores and learning for elementary school-age children in the United States.
And of course, in the U.S., we really took two paths. Red states opened up everything with almost no restrictions, and many blue states actually opened up businesses, bars, restaurants, without opening up the schools full-time.
Sunday night and to the somber homecoming for the 13 brave Americans killed in Thursday's attack at the Kabul airport. 11 Marines, 1 Army soldier, and a Navy corpsman, most of them in their early 20s.
Strategic failure. Nevertheless, top commanders recommended to President Biden that the U.S. keep troops in Afghanistan. The president rejected that, and the Americans and NATO allies withdrew on August 31st.
Earlier this year, after 20 years of war in Afghanistan, they advised it was not time to withdraw. Central Command Chief General Frank McKenzie.
My view is that 2,500 was an appropriate number to remain, and that if we went below that number, in fact, we would probably witness a collapse of the Afghan government and the Afghan military.
That refutes President Biden's August statement to ABC News' George Stephanopoulos that the military supported the withdrawal.
They didn't argue against that.
So no one told your military advisors did not tell you, no, we should just keep 2,500 troops. It's been a stable situation for the last several years. We can do that. We can continue to do that.
No one said that to me that I can recall.
With just 2 more days left, it's clear that some of those who risked their lives to help the mission are now going to be left behind. US officials say they're working on alternative routes, but that's little comfort to those we've spoken to, who tonight are at home, feeling abandoned and afraid.
I want to be very clear. Our borders are not open.
Approximately 4,200 in 1 week.
According to Mayor Adams, more than 70,000 migrants have arrived in the Big Apple over recent months, and 42,000 are still under city care.
We don't have any more space. I cannot emphasize that enough.
With the number of migrant arrivals now averaging 200 per day, Mayor Lori Lightfoot signing this emergency order, saying Chicago is stretched to the breaking point.
A border shutdown in El Paso, Texas, as hundreds force their way onto the Paso del Norte International Bridge.
This is not being blown out of proportion.
Those of us who live on the border, this is not news. This is standard operating procedure, all day, every day.
Pick a spot along the U.S.-Mexico border in Eagle Pass, Texas, and in a matter of minutes, you'll understand the gravity of the immigration situation.
¿De dónde eres? Venezuela. I want to be very clear. Our borders are not open.
Tonight, intelligence from top-secret U.S. spy planes is providing startling details about China's spy operations. We are learning that images taken of the spy balloons by high-altitude U-2 planes show in detail 5 antennas and huge solar panels, the kind of technology that gave the Chinese not just the ability to listen to U.S. communications and to pinpoint exactly where they were coming from, who they were coming from. All of this especially alarming as the balloon passed over sensitive military sites before the U.S. Air Force shot it down off the South Carolina coast.
American Brittany Griner is on her way home. Her release was part of a prisoner swap for international arms dealer Victor Bout. The so-called Merchant of Death was serving a 25-year federal prison sentence in Illinois for conspiring to kill Americans and for supporting terrorism.
In this prisoner swap, why did Russia get such a better deal?
And
they gave up a professional athlete. We gave up a prolific arms dealer who was convicted of trying to kill Americans, who was called the Merchant of Death.
I was arrested for a crime that never occurred. I'm happy that Brittany is going home today and that Trevor went home when he did. But I don't understand why I'm still sitting here. I have to say I'm greatly disappointed that more has not been done to secure my release.
Paul Whelan today from his cell in Russia after the news that he was not included in the prisoner swap with Brittany Griner.
So there are just a few more examples of circumstances that actually pose threats to American citizens that our president has been directly responsible for or had at least some power over. And I guess the purpose of me making this video isn't even an endorsement for Trump, because I'm not really on that bandwagon, and I'm not trying to come off as saying that I'm on a Trump bandwagon. But the claim was made that Joe Biden is a safer choice for the Republic of the United States. And looking at it, and looking at all the failures that have happened, the former president didn't have this many failures. And if he did, you'd still be hearing about it today. The current administration is actually still trying to blame the Afghanistan withdrawal, the border circumstances. They're still trying to blame everything that's happening to them on the previous administration. And it's just like a never-ending circle jerk. Like, these people can't take responsibility for anything they've done. They don't take any responsibility for the school crisis and the learning loss. Nobody's taking any responsibility for the nursing home crisis. And if President Trump would have traded the Merchant of Death for a WNBA player, you guys would still be calling him a Russian agent. And look, I went through COVID and the lockdowns just like everybody else did, and I was hoping President Biden would get things back to normal and that it would eventually somehow return to a normal media cycle and a normal politics cycle, and it just hasn't. In my opinion, President Biden has not helped that situation. He has not came out and tried to bring people together. You hear every speech he makes, he has to bring up the MAGA Republicans, MAGA Republicans, MAGA Republicans at every time he talks. And he just has made zero effort to take accountability for the American people, to take accountability for his actions, and to bring people together. And if he can't do any of those things, which he hasn't, and he's also had all these failures without bringing people together, he's essentially just a useless prop at this point. But hey, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Please hit that like button if you enjoyed the video, and make sure you subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. I really appreciate you watching.